Guten Tag, and welcome to the latest episode of the Online Warriors podcast. As always, I am Illeagle 86, one of your three hosts. I am also joined by my good friend Techtic.
Hey, how's it going?
And my also good friend, the Nerdbomber.
Guten Tag.
Guten Tag. I think Guten Tag actually might actually mean good afternoon. I might have screwed up right away. I know it's German, guys, but I don't know exactly. It might be good evening. I don't know. Again, we don't know when you're listening to this, so I guess it really doesn't matter. The point is, we're here. Give yourself a pat on the back for surviving another week on this crazy world. And we're here to talk to you about some nerd things once again. We're going to talk about maybe some of the biggest gaming news to come out of this past week, which is the announcement of Half-Life Alyx. We're going to be talking about Google Stadia, which is being, I think, rolled out as we speak. Some early reviews are coming out. There's a lot to dissect there. And then, of course, we're going to be getting down and dirty with Myles Garrett. And that came out wrong. But we're going to be talking about Myles Garrett is what I mean. And if you don't know who Myles Garrett is, oh, well, we'll explain that. But before we get into things, how are you guys doing over there?
I'm doing pretty good. How are you doing, Nerdbomber?
I'm doing okay. I've had a very busy week, so looking forward to having a good discussion that's not about work things.
Well, I think we can help with that. So let's get right into it, and let's talk a little bit about Half-Life Alyx. So first of all, have you guys ever played any of the Half-Life games?
I unfortunately have not.
So I'm a big fan of what I like to call the orange box grouping of games, and you have played some of that, aka Portal 1 and Portal 2.
Right, but that's not part of Half-Life, right?
No, so Half-Life is it's more of like a classic shooter, I would say. I don't think I've played Half-Life 1. I have played Half-Life 2, which is kind of backwards, but Half-Life 2 was amazing. One of my favorite shooters ever. I actually played it on the PC, which I don't really PC game very much. This was way back a long time ago that I played this, but I really enjoyed it. And Half-Life 2, instead of coming out with Half-Life 3, what Valve did is they came out with what are called Half-Life Episode 1, Half-Life 2 Episode 1, and Half-Life 2 Episode 2, which is kind of confusing. I don't know why they didn't just come out with Half-Life 3. But Episode 2 was way back in 2007, and people have been waiting for Half-Life 3 for I don't even know how long. What has been announced, you actually might not even call it Half-Life 3. What it's being called is Half-Life Alyx, and it's Valve's first flagship VR game. So the company apparently announced earlier on that it would build 3 full-length VR games, and this is the first of them. So there's a lot to be excited about here, especially if you're a fan of Valve. First of all, they're getting into the VR platform. Second of all, if you're a Half-Life fan, this is obviously really good news for you. I have not played Half-Life 2 Episode 2, and I'm told that it ended on a cliffhanger, so people might be excited to see if anything is resolved there. I've also been made aware of kind of a Valve conspiracy theory, which is that apparently Valve has a hard time counting to 3. When you look at some of their past games, Team Fortress, Portal, Left 4 Dead, Dota, and Half-Life, they all have sequels. None of them have third installments. So we could be bucking a major trend here.
It's crazy, too, because all of those franchises are like wildly successful games. I know I'm a big Left 4 Dead fan, and I've been waiting for Left 4 Dead 3 forever, and there's been so many games that like have copied that general play style and game style, but it would just be nice to have a Left 4 Dead 3.
Maybe that'll be the next VR.
Man, that would be amazing. I also love Left 4 Dead. One of my favorite zombie franchises, especially Left 4 Dead 2. They introduced a lot of new content that was built on top of Left 4 Dead 1. It was awesome. I have never played Team Fortress, but I know people who pretty much swear by it. As you mentioned, Techtic, the orange box is like a big thing.
That's kind of what I'm hoping spins off of this VR experience is a VR Team Fortress, because the builds and the huge following behind that whole game dynamic is astronomical, and people are still making new builds and levels and things like that in Team Fortress.
So I haven't even played Portal 2. I'm behind. Is
Are
what
you
I'm
serious?
learning. I have not played Portal 2. I'm trying to think. I might have started Portal 2. I did. I started Portal 2 and I didn't finish it, which I know Valve fanboys out there are probably pretty upset with me right now.
I mean, it's not even the Valve fanboy thing. It's like literally one of the best couch co-op experiences you can ever have, period. Hands down, no debate. Yes.
Or it can put incredibly frustrating if your partner can't figure out puzzles.
That would be me. Still fun though.
Wow. Well, I will take that into account, I guess. I'm excited about Half-Life Alyx. I don't know what their plans are as far as, and this article that I have in front of me does not say if this is going to be just a computer thing, if it's also going to be a PSVR thing. You know, they've released the Portals on PlayStation and Xbox, as far as I'm aware. I actually played Portal 2 on a computer as well. I used to have a gaming computer, and then I sold it. So I haven't been PCing very much, but yeah, I don't know. I'm definitely there on Half-Life Alyx, and if you haven't played Half-Life 2, you should really, really check it out.
It'll be really interesting to see how this will be as a VR title. Because, I mean, there are so many different VR titles, but I feel like there are not many full VR experiences, so to speak. Like, you don't really see major flagship games developed solely for VR. Obviously, you see ports like Doom and Skyrim and Borderlands all got VR adaptations, but the base game, the regular like couch or desk game, came first. So it'll be interesting to see if this will spawn like a new era of VR specific titles that are AAA titles. Because really, if you think about it, there's not many AAA VR games. There's plenty of really awesome VR games that are super technically amazing achievements and graphically are a lot of fun and immersive. But when it comes down to having that like big AAA experience, there's not many out there. So it'll be interesting to see how well this does and if the success will spark something more along AAA VR titles.
I think what I'm really excited about is the fact that, again, with Half-Life 2 kind of being my point of reference, graphics have come so far since a Half-Life game came out that, like, I mean, 2007, the Xbox 360 was like not even out for that long at that point. So like there's a lot of room to grow for the graphics, and the world building in Half-Life 2 was really great. It was one of the more vivid dystopias that I can remember. Also a lot of fun with physics to be had, kind of similar to Portal. So I think that it could just be a really, really great playground for VR. And you make a great point that as I sit back and think about, I mean, you mentioned Skyrim, you mentioned Doom, I think you mentioned one other one, but you mentioned a bunch of AAA games that were essentially ports. And I'm going to talk about actually Doom later when we get to our What Are You Up To Wednesday. But we haven't seen a full-fledged sequel of a franchise go to VR, kind of like what Valve is hoping to do here. So it could be really interesting to see if a company has enough faith in VR and their own ability to develop in VR to actually, like you said, make a richer experience with some of their existing IP.
And I mean, for such a flagship IP, I mean, people have been waiting for a new Half-Life installment for so long. And it would almost be akin to like the next Marvel movie being announced to be in either VR or like only 3D. And it's just an interesting choice. I wonder how many people are interested enough in Half-Life and who are eagerly awaiting the sequel to really jump in then and get the next VR platform that maybe they haven't gotten yet. Maybe they're holding off, and maybe this will be the thing that really compels them to buy into Valve's VR systems.
I'm willing to bet that they make a spin-off game of this one where it'll be inclusive for those who don't have VR, similar to what Superhot did, where you can play the game with the VR experience and move the hands and everything around, but you can also play it with a normal controller and just
Superhot actually was a indie non-VR game, and then as VR became a little bit more popular, they delved into it, and I think it actually fits the VR format better than the controller format. But that's just another port though. Like, we've seen a lot of ports. There's obviously a lot of dedicated indie games, but not a lot of ports that are super popular and started as VR exclusive.
I'm just saying, be inclusive for those who don't have a VR so that they can still get the game story experience, but won't need to invest into a VR.
So I am curious, I mean, I think as I think about it more, I think the answer to why this is happening, why there aren't as many AAA titles on VR, I think it's fairly obvious, which is that is it that the technology just isn't quite there yet? Is it that you're inherently restricted by VR no matter what you do, and it's never going to get any better? I mean, I don't know. Like, it's hard for me to imagine, as great as this sounds, it's hard for me to imagine the Half-Life experience as I know it in VR. The Half-Life experience is a lot of walking around with a gun in front of you. And granted, I have played VR games like that. I mentioned Farpoint, I think, last week, but I think that's tends to be a pretty tricky format in VR. I think VR is much more focused on immersion than it is on any sort of combat. So I'm curious to see if this could be a gateway, and I'm also curious to see if this is what Valve is considering to be Half-Life 3, or if there is an even larger Half-Life game on the horizon. But either way, there is actually going to be this coming Thursday at 10 a.m. Pacific time, Valve is going to be fully unveiling Half-Life Alyx. So right now, they pretty much just mentioned this is what this new game is, but they haven't shown us anything. So Thursday could be a pretty big day. And if you're listening to this on the day we release it, set your alarm clocks for tomorrow at 10 a.m. Pacific time and make sure to do all the time zone math.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing what their plan is. Because like you said, there are a lot of limitations with VR. I think some of it is the technical aspect, but I think a lot of it too is just the adoption rate is not there if you're putting a major title and investing the time to develop a VR game, which is a very intensive process. I feel like you want to ensure that you have your monies or the ability to get your money back by having a big install rate on the platform that you're going to put it on. And not to mention, like, I don't know how you get around the motion sickness issue. Because even having your VR legs, eventually you can only play a game for so long, I would say, at least for most people. I think people tend to cap out around a couple hours, even if they are very experienced VR players, just because you get tired and you get sick. So I'll be interested to see what they've got up their sleeve on Thursday.
Yeah, for me, I mean, my VR experience, it probably tops out in an hour. Like, even as immersed as I've been in VR, and my PSVR experience has been largely positive. I don't get sick as much, which is surprising because I'm very prone to motion sickness for those that know me. But I get headaches, and I just it's a heavy headset to be wearing on your head. And after an hour, I need to take a break. And that is definitely a drawback to it. It's in as much as VR is immersive, it's harder for VR games to suck you in because you can't just lose an entire day to it, which you certainly can if you're me with just sitting in front of a screen with a controller. So I will be curious. I mean, that's one of the challenges of VR. And if there's any company that could figure out a way around that, I would suppose Valve would be one of them. So I'll be curious to see what happens. Big things happening on the VR front, on the Valve front. Big things happening on the gaming front in general, because on the day that we record this, which is Tuesday, Stadia has officially launched. So we talked about Google Stadia. Oh boy. I mean, we probably talked about it a few times, but either way, it's been a while. So I'll just run people through some of the specifics right now. Essentially, Google is launching a new cloud gaming service called Stadia today, which some are likening to the Netflix of video games. Basically, you can stream and play games through smartphones, web browsers, or even through your Chromecast. Subscriptions, a current subscription, which I think is like a launch special, is $130 and comes with a Stadia controller, a Chromecast dongle, 3 months of usage, and a free pass so a friend can also play with you. Next year, Google is planning to roll out another option called Stadia Pro, which will cost $9.99 a month and include a rotating free game as well as a free-to-play version of Stadia with a lower resolution. So there's kind of a lot to process here, but we have kind of been seeing some news trickle out in the past couple of days about the Stadia experience. And from what I have read, I've read a few articles, it seems like it's a very uneven experience. Stadia is obviously kind of their big thing is have console quality gaming without a console. And it's all in the cloud. You don't have to wait to install games. They're all already there, etc. They actually also recently, I think last week, doubled the number of titles that will be available to play on day one, Destiny 2 being kind of the big one that they're touting. The problem is the same as the solution, though, in that you're super, super reliant on Wi-Fi. And a lot of people are kind of saying that, at times it's almost unplayable because it just depends so much on what kind of internet connection you have. And I don't know, for me, this is kind of an expected result. I don't know what people were expecting. I mean, what do you guys think about this? Would you buy Stadia? are you surprised that there are some bumps in the road early on?
This feels very Google Glassy to me. And what I mean by that is, in theory, sounds like an awesome, really cool piece of technology. It's going to be something that's going to change the game. However, it's just way too ahead of its time, and we're just not there yet. And I just keep seeing it time and time again fall flat on its face with these expected nuances.
Yeah, so Kotaku has their impression of Google Stadia. The title of the article is "Google Stadia Just Ain't It," which again I think that is kind of the overall sentiment. I do agree with you that maybe we're just not there yet. I'm also not sure that we're ever going to be there. And I would like to think that I voiced this concern when we first talked about Stadia a while ago. I'm just not sure that phasing out consoles is ever going to take off, both because of the technical aspect, and I think there's a psychological aspect to it as well. You know, and I know it is coming back to me. We definitely talked about how there's something about a physical game. There's something about holding a copy of a game, or even holding a console, or a controller that you bought or something, that I think you feel so much more like you're getting what you pay for, that I don't know if you could get with Stadia.
I don't necessarily agree with that, but I have a lot of thoughts and I want to run through them before I forget them.
Please do.
So Google Stadia as a service, I'm not buying into. The first thing that kind of off-puts me a little bit is the fact that it's only launching with under, I think it's 30 games. It's in the 20s somewhere. And I think if you're launching a platform that's leveraging the power of PC gaming, honestly, because that's really what they're doing, is they're going to tap into the Steam library of games and leverage the cloud to bring it to you without a console or a PC. I think you have to launch with more than just 20 some games. I think that's a huge miss. I also don't like the fact that they're delaying features. So I don't think that you should be able to announce a service as a company. At least in my opinion, you shouldn't be able to announce a service that you think will be available at launch and then be like, you know what, guys, buy into it, pre-order this, but those services that we said that we'd give you, all of those features are not going to be available for a while, and we can't give you a definite end date when those things will be implemented. I don't like that. I don't think that's a good business practice. I don't believe that. I don't know. I think that's a terrible thing to do, to buy into as a subscription model. I also I don't necessarily agree that streaming isn't the way of the future, though. I think Microsoft has a little bit of a leg up on Google here, just because they've been so ingrained in the gaming community. And X019 actually just occurred, I think, last week Thursday. And one of the things that they announced was that xCloud, their answer to the streaming and a gaming library that's digital, is going to include all of your any game that you own, any game that's on Game Pass, which is a huge, staggering library at this point. And they seem like they have the widespread gaming infrastructure and gaming knowledge and background to pull something like this off. And they seem like they're taking the time. They're doing the beta testing. They have the existing platform to really test this out and take it the distance. I just don't know if I trust Google with that, because they have that history of dropping projects after a year or two when they don't succeed the way that they think they will. I couldn't imagine spending $127 on a founder's pack just to have basically a brick in a couple years when Google decides that Stadia is no longer something they want to pursue. I couldn't imagine that. I will say that Game Pass has been an incredible value, and I'm still buying games, but man, it makes it very difficult to want to buy games because there's so many games on that service that I could see in some future, if I stop caring about physical game discs, I could see myself going on Game Pass and never buying a game again.
I mean, we got to play Gears right when it just came out.
Right. I mean, and that's the thing, right, is that in the midst of all the people complaining about, latency issues and stuff, and like you said, the size of the library, which I do want to note also, I have a list in front of me. I think 30 is about right. I haven't counted. One of the games is Farming Simulator 2019. So I don't count that. If you're a Farming Simulator person out there and you're mad at me, tweet at me at OW Illeagle 86. I think outside the technical questions, one of the biggest questions that you should be able to answer with a resounding no is, do you really need this? I mean, the $129 price point for the Founders Pack as it stands right now, you are halfway to a console with that. So even if you have a console right now and you're feeling like it's stale, you feel like you need something new, with a Founders Pack, you're halfway to a console that I'm sure has many, many more game options than Stadia has. And any features, quote unquote features, that Stadia is claiming to have over consoles right now are in beta at best and frustrating at worst. So, yeah, I mean, for me, this is a non-starter. I think cloud gaming is a thing, and I think it's far more likely that you have a console that's tied to a cloud gaming experience than just having, a Stadia and a Chromecast. But yeah, I mean, without playing it, without seeing it, obviously, I kind of agree that I don't think this is it. I want it to be it. But at the same time, like I said, I can definitely relate to people who want to hold something in their hand. So you think you might eventually be able to just go all cloud gaming, no physical copies?
I think personally for me, I'm always going to have a special place in my heart for physical media. But like, think about kids growing up now. The generation of people who are 10 years and under, they may never even see a disc.
It's all digital content now.
So that might not even be an issue for them in the future.
And it's crazy thinking back, like when I was younger, and this is kind of different, but again, Stadia is being described as the Netflix of games, right? The thing is, when I was a kid, when I made like Christmas lists and stuff, or birthday lists, I would put DVDs on it. And like, I still have physical copies of a bunch of DVDs. And granted, every now and again, even these days, I will, if I really love a movie and I see the Blu-ray for a reasonable price, I will pick it up. But like, it's just not the kind of thing that people buy anymore. And like, even like Black Friday sales are happening now, and I'm sure we'll talk about Black Friday in a couple weeks and our experiences. But like, even in like Best Buy's ad, you see like at least 2 pages of like these Blu-rays and these DVDs are on sale. And I see that and I think consciously, who cares? So like, maybe we'll eventually be at the same point with games. I don't see that. There's still, I think, a lot in the way of that happening, but maybe for all I know, 10 years ago, whenever Netflix started, people were like, what is the deal with this? It doesn't make any sense. Although at the beginning of Netflix, there actually were physical discs involved, and it was the mailing service.
I think you can still do that with Netflix, right? I think like if you go on their website, you can sign up for the DVD mailing service. I just don't know anybody who actually does it. It's
crazy. I mean, I still use a Redbox now and again, but like you said, Techtic, like we're living in an age of digital content. So in theory, it does make a lot of sense for video games to go that way as well. But I don't know if there's a difference between watching a movie that's just being streamed to you and playing a game. And like, how many times have we been watching Hulu or Netflix or whatever? You rent a movie and halfway through it stops, even just for a few seconds, to buffer. Like in a movie environment, that's okay. It's not going to kill you. In a game environment, it could be critical. So like, I just don't know. Like you said, Techtic, I don't think we're there yet.
I think the next 10, 20 years will be really interesting because I think that our infrastructure, at least for internet, will improve drastically. But again, there's markets where that just isn't an option. Like there are some countries where the internet is not very developed. So if you did rely on a streaming service, you would be completely screwed. Like you wouldn't be able to play your games. So I do agree. If we do move towards that future, it's a long ways off. And I do think there's got to be a lot of legal things that happen, things that are more well-defined, because you do have these things like lost games. If a publisher, like the agreement to host the game on a streaming service runs out, that game could be lost forever. And it's not like a movie or a TV show, like you said. Like you can watch those, you can find an old clip on YouTube, you can watch like a shaky hand cam someone took, and there's a record of a movie or a TV show out there somewhere. And watching it is not like, there's no difference between watching it on a DVD that you own versus watching it off of YouTube. But with a game, sure, you can watch someone play, you can probably dig up some old Let's Plays or streams, but it's not the same because you're not actually experiencing it. So I think there's a lot of digital media rights things that need to be worked out legally too. And like who owns games when they're digital, like licensing and stuff like that. It's just a very complicated and messy arena. And I don't think anybody's really looked into it that deeply, and it needs to happen.
Now, do you think that, so a year from now, Google is planning on putting out this Stadia Pro, which is going to have lower resolution graphics, but it's going to be $10 a month. So essentially a very similar price point to Netflix and stuff. If we're a year down the road, the technology has stabilized, we've decided that Google is not just going to throw this the way of Google Glass. Does that sweeten the pot enough for you to consider it, or are you still, bowing out in favor of Microsoft service or in favor of no cloud service? Where do you stand on that?
So I play video games and buy a console to be immersed into a new world. And right. If you're automatically selling me with, the graphics are going to be kind of crappy, but it's going to be cheap.
Right.
Okay. Don't do that. Give me good graphics, please.
Yeah, I think it's almost catering to a different market. Unless they can really get the fidelity of games down and your internet speeds don't matter and you're still going to get that amazing console quality experience. I think, and I hesitate to call myself or any of us here on this podcast hardcore, quote unquote, gamers. But I think we're more hardcore than the general population, just because we probably play more. And I think for us, it's not appealing, but I could imagine if you're someone who sees the evolution of Twitch and sees gaming blowing up and becoming this mainstream thing, maybe it appeals to people like that, where you don't know if you want to commit to buying a console, but maybe you're okay with, because I guess I don't really truly know as much about Stadia as I probably should, but can you run it without the dongle? Like, say you had it on your computer, I'm pretty sure you could play Google Stadia.
I believe currently you cannot.
But that's like coming in the future.
But it's coming in 2020, I believe.
So like future state, you could pay your $10 a month, give it a try, play it on your computer, see if you like it, and then if you don't, no harm done. You didn't sink $200 into a console. You were out $10. So I could see it appealing to people who aren't super ingrained in gaming already. I think it's a good stepping stone maybe for people, but I think there's so many limitations and things lacking that you would quickly grow out of Stadia unless it changes super dramatically.
Yeah, so we should move on, but one thing I do want to note in closing, have you guys seen the controller for this thing? I want your thoughts on this, because I think it looks bad. I think it looks like a worse version of the Xbox controller. And I know people love the Xbox controller, but when I look at the Stadia controller, it looks like something that did not have a whole lot of design put into it. It's a very, very flat shape that it doesn't seem particularly ergonomic to me.
What it reminds me of is if I go back to playing, I think it was when I got my Raspberry Pi, like 6 years ago, and I didn't want to try to figure out how to get my wireless Xbox One controller to interact with the games. I just wasn't that invested in my Raspberry Pi at the time. I just wanted like a quick solution. I didn't want to buy the $30 dongle. So I bought a $10 controller off of Amazon that had no design put into it whatsoever, and this is what it looks like.
That's literally what I was going to say. It reminds me of the ShopRite brand of an Xbox controller. I think it's like Gamepad or something like that.
Like it's clearly trying to be the same thing, but corners were cut at various stages. It's like that's what I see in it. But I don't know. I mean, maybe it's great. I haven't held it, and that's the most important thing. In any case, Stadia is out now. If you want to be in on the Founders Edition, even though we just spent like 15 minutes crapping on it, go check it out. And if you do have it already and want to dispute any of what we said about it, do hit us up on social media. That'll use this as an excuse to mention our social media accounts. We have our main Twitter account at OnlineWarriors1. We also have our host accounts. I am at OW Illeagle86. We have at OW Nerdbomber and at OW Techtic. So go hit us up, start a conversation with us. We're there to interact with our lovely audience. We are going to do a quick ad break here, but before we do, I want to make mention of our fantastic Patreon producer, Mr. Ben Checkness. Ben supports us on Patreon at the highest of our 3 levels, which is the night level, and as a result, he gets a producer shout out on every episode, in addition to input into our game segment, and soon enough, he's going to be joining us again for some exclusive on-air time with us. That could be you guys. You could talk to us about how much Google Stadia is bad or something else. Who knows? If you want to be like Ben, you can head on over to our Online Warriors Patreon page at patreon.com/Online Warriors podcast. And as I mentioned, there are 3 levels of support. Ben supports at the night level, which gets him producer credit. It gets him access to our monthly secret segment and our monthly vlog. You can also support us at the Squire level, which gets you access to the monthly secret segment and monthly vlog. You can also support us at the page level, which gets you access to the monthly secret segment. So we would really appreciate it. We'd appreciate any support. We love doing what we do. And we love anyone who loves that we do it. So feel free to go check us out. And in the meantime, let's hear from some of our friends.
What's up, nerds? This is Rich, the host of the 3 Fat Nerds podcast. I would like to invite you to check out our podcast. We have 2 shows every week, and both of our shows are about everything that is pop culture and nerdom. That's right, we talk about movies, we talk about comics, we talk about video games, we talk about role-playing games, we talk about Dungeons & Dragons, and so much more. You can find us anywhere you get podcasts just by searching 3 Fat Nerds. Also, while you're at it, go ahead and like our page on Facebook, 3 Fat Nerds Podcast. Follow us on Twitter and Instagram at 3 Fat Nerds Pod. And of course, you can check out our website, 8122productions.com. Most importantly, I hope you enjoyed the show. With that being said, there's only one thing left to say. That's later, nerds.
We are back, and we are here to enter the spin zone on our sports topic for the week, which is the Myles Garrett incident. So for those that do not know, Myles Garrett is a defensive lineman, I believe, for the Cleveland Browns. We're talking about NFL football now. I don't know if anyone... I want to say NFL football because football can be soccer and etc. But anyways, in a Thursday night game last week, playing against the Pittsburgh Steelers, actually the Browns were winning by quite a bit. I think it was 21-7, the game's final seconds, and Pittsburgh had the ball. Myles Garrett sacked. Well, actually, he did not sack Mason Rudolph. Mason Rudolph had thrown the ball away. It was not, however, I would not call it a late hit. I think it was a clean hit. I think he just kind of took Mason Rudolph down. Mason Rudolph, having been in a few scrapes himself already this year, did not care for that. So he tried to take off Myles Garrett's helmet. And then, anyways, a scuffle ensued. Myles Garrett took off Mason Rudolph's helmet and hit him in the head with it. And if you haven't seen this footage, it's wild. I don't know if I want to publicly recommend that you go watch it because it's also, and it's not like bloody or anything, but it's like pretty vicious. And obviously, you know, people were in an uproar, fans of the game, pundits were all saying like he should be suspended for however long. He has been suspended indefinitely. As of this recording, he is still suspended indefinitely, I believe at bare minimum for the remainder of the regular season and the postseason, although the Browns probably aren't going to make the postseason. So I guess I just to open things up, I do want to ask you guys, do you think that's a fair punishment? Do you think it should be a lifelong ban? I mean, where's your head at on this?
So I'm going to attack this the way I attack any real issue like this within major national sports.
By swinging a helmet at it.
Yeah. All of these athletes are role models, and they need to always refer back to that. Doesn't matter what sport you're in, you're always a role model for the youth. And one of the most important things to have, and this is on both sides of this scruffle, is good sportsmanship. If you got knocked down, even if it was a bad hit, shrug it off, get back to the next play, and do your business. Don't try scrapping. Don't hit someone with a helmet. Be the bigger man and be a good role model for our youth. I think that is the most important thing. They're paying you ridiculous amounts of money to just go out there, do your job, and that's it. Not to try to make a scene.
Right. And again, worth noting, I think I mentioned this, but like the game is essentially over at this point. It's out of reach for Pittsburgh to win. Cleveland has won. So like there's no need. I mean, even if the game was close, there isn't need for any of this, but like there is especially no need for any of it in a game that's completely out of hand. It's completely over. And there's just no place for it. Even in a sport so violent as the NFL, and it's seeing kind of some rule changes now to make it less violent, but like obviously I don't know if there is a rule for like I'm sure there is a rule you can't swing a helmet at somebody, but I also feel like they might not have thought that they would need to like write that down. It's kind of just like should just be kind of codified in our general morals as human beings. But Nerdbomber, where are you at?
So my initial reaction when I first saw the footage was, wow, that was totally egregious and uncalled for.
Yeah.
Then seeing the different camera angles that captured Mason Rudolph trying to wrench his helmet off, I can kind of understand why he took Mason Rudolph's helmet off. However, I think it should have ended there. I think he should have maybe thrown it across the field, maybe not tried to bean Mason Rudolph in the head with it. I think it would have been totally justified if he grabbed his helmet and just like tossed it away or something out of anger, because I can understand like your head is your biggest asset, and I don't know, I feel like you want to protect your head. So having someone try to take off your helmet, I can understand why tempers might have flared and he would have grabbed at the other guy's helmet. But swinging it at someone's head, I think that's just totally uncalled for. If you didn't suspend him, I think that sets a bad precedent as the NFL. As it was, that caused a huge scuffle. I mean, Myles Garrett was also then attacked. I don't know if that's the right word, but I mean, he was kicked in the head a couple times. He was basically
punched
mugged
and kicked.
I mean, those guys got suspended too. I just think the entire thing was uncalled for. And even just like, Mason Rudolph, I think it's key to point out, did not get any punishment though. And at the end of the day, like, okay, you took a hit, but you shouldn't be trying to wrench someone's helmet off for doing their job in the game, because it wasn't a really dirty hit at all. It was pretty much just in the flow of the game. And so I feel like that needs to be looked at, and maybe something needs to be said there, because as a rookie, I mean, you shouldn't be instigating things like that either. So
Mason Rudolph, first of all, you're right. He's not going to be suspended. He will be fined, is what I'm reading right now.
Big whoop.
Not something that he probably cares too much about. And of course, you have people like Marquise Pouncey, who was the offensive lineman for the Steelers, who was trying to separate the two, and then later, after the helmet thing happened, he, like I said, was punching and kicking Myles Garrett. He claims to have blacked out, and he also essentially stands by his actions, saying that, you know, if someone goes after my quarterback, I'm going to take them down, et cetera, et cetera. You know, I've seen a wide range of reactions to this. I have seen people saying, you know, Mason Rudolph should also be taken to task at least a little bit for this. I mean, he didn't swing the helmet, but it could definitely be argued that he started, you know, something that eventually escalated to where it went. I've seen people say that Myles Garrett, you know, this is a criminal situation where, you know, that's assault with a deadly weapon. I don't know to what extent police were involved in any of this. I did see something at one point that said police were in the locker room at one point, but I don't know. That should be considered unsubstantiated.
Actually, that's a really interesting point. When it comes to sports, there's so many things that happen, especially when you think about physical sports. So like football, hockey, things like that, where like fighting and checking and getting hit is a natural part of the game. At what point does that cross over into assault? Right.
So, I have an AP News article in front of me right now saying that the Cleveland police are not pursuing charges, possibly because they are the Cleveland police and it's a member of the Cleveland Browns in question. I don't know. We see things like Vontae's Perfect, one of the dirtiest players in the league. was suspended for the rest of the season for a helmet-to-helmet hit. So, I think with something like this, a suspension that lasts for the rest of this season is the bare minimum that should be done. Past that, I'm not sure if the suspension should bleed into next year. I think he's on very thin ice the same way. I think he's on thin ice now the same way that Vontae's Perfect is and was. Vontae's Perfect is now kind of, given his history, is under what's essentially a what's the word? It's like they're going to throw the book at him every time if he does something wrong. And Myles Garrett, up until now, I think has had a relatively clean record, but he's going to be in the same situation now where he's going to be watched very aggressively. If he does anything that could even be construed as violent, he's going to get at least a fine slapped on him or worse. So I don't know. It felt appropriate to talk about this just because, as you mentioned, Techtic, there's just no place in the game for this. And man, seeing the footage of Rudolph getting whacked by that helmet. So Rudolph, for those that don't know, earlier in the season was concussed in the Ravens Steelers game. And did you guys see that game or what happened when he got hit?
Yeah, that was scary. Honestly kind of scary and sickening because essentially, for those of you who haven't seen the clip, this is kind of squeamish. So if you don't like these type of things, yeah, like basically midair, he just goes limp and drops, and like his fingers pointing, and he's just like out.
Yeah. So I mean, with that in mind, I don't condone what anyone has done. I mean, so many players are getting fined or suspended for this. I know that I saw yesterday players who left because the bench is cleared when this happened, and players who left the bench and came onto the field are getting fined. They're just fining everybody who is involved and suspending a number of people as well. Also worth noting, there's a game, the second Steelers-Browns game of the season, because they're in the same division. They play each other twice. I want to say it's like 2 weeks from now or like a week from now. It's like there's a really short window between them, so officials and just kind of higher ups in the league are going to be very, very on high alert for this game. But, going back to Mason Rudolph's position in all this, I don't condone what he did, but given what he's been through, I can understand him being at least a little skittish about, don't hit me this way, don't hit me that way. I, almost died. That's what it looked like, is in that first Ravens game, in that hit. It seemed like he, really went through something there, and maybe that's why he got so upset with Garrett. I don't know why the inclination is to take his helmet off. I guess so you could lay a punch on him. I honestly don't know.
But that being said, all of these athletes who are getting major concussions, like that wasn't even a minor one where they didn't catch it until like after the game or something when they were reviewing the tape.
Right.
That was a major concussion. And he had a relatively quick turnaround time from the time he went down and looked like he almost died on the field to playing again, which is just absurd. You have to wonder at what point, if you're going to be skittish and this is going to haunt you, like, is it worth it? Is it worth playing again? Like, I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know.
I know you've worked your whole life to get to that point, but at the end of the day, when you have a hit that scary, like, he's lucky that he's walking. I don't know.
Well, and even this Myles Garrett incident. So when Myles Garrett hits him with this helmet, he hits him with kind of like the bottom part, actually close to the part you put your head into. If he hits Mason Rudolph on the top of the head with the crown of this helmet, things are way, way worse. And like, I don't even want to think about how bad they could have been. So that's another element that you have to bring into all this and bring into the punishment phase of it is, it's not how bad was it, it's how bad could it have been. And it could have been so, so much worse. So, like I said, it just felt appropriate to kind of unpack that and talk about it a little bit. I know Myles Garrett will be appealing his suspension. I have no idea what he plans on saying. I don't know what you could say, given the footage that's in front of him. I think his current argument, if I remember correctly, is players can't be suspended indefinitely for on-field incidents. But
is that really a thing? Yeah,
according to the CBA, which is the collective bargaining agreement that the NFL Players Association has. You can't be suspended. So, like, we've seen indefinite suspensions before. I believe Adrian Peterson was indefinitely suspended for a while. Ray Rice, of course, was a very famous case. Kareem Hunt, I believe, was also indefinitely suspended. But those are all for off-field incidents. On-field
Can't
incidents,
they just lay like a 5-year suspension on him?
I believe typically what the maximum is 6 games. And if it's over 6 games, it just jumps right to indefinite. So I think that's kind of what happened here is they said, okay, well, it's got to be more than 6 games because, wow, so it's indefinite. I think that's his argument. It's going to be his argument at the league office is it was an on-the-field incident, so by this agreement, I can't be suspended for longer than X. And granted, even if they, say, okay, sure, and hit him with the maximum of 6, the Browns ain't going to the playoffs. So, that'll be it for his season. With that said, I think it should be longer than 6 games.
Can you be ejected from the NFL totally? Like, can you be expelled for something that you've done on the field? I feel like that has to be like, there are things you could do on the field or in game that are so bad or dangerous that you're just not safe to play in the league anymore.
I mean, the NFL has to watch their own public image, so I'm sure they have a clause where they can fire him for any reason they want.
Yeah, well, I don't know. I wouldn't be so sure. The collective bargaining agreement is, again, it seems like it's very, very stringent about off-field incidents, but on the field, I think the argument must be that they're playing a game. What happens in the game happens in the game. Now, granted, like you said, Nerdbomber, like one of these players could shoot somebody on the field, and then is it technically an on-field incident? Like what happens then? So I don't know where this is going. I would imagine the suspension will be upheld. Again, as you said, Techtic, the league has an image to uphold, and if you see this footage, there's a lot of people that think he shouldn't play the game again. So I think anything less than at least this entire season would not be a good look. Now, we've seen the NFL and Roger Goodell. It could be argued that they've bungled disciplinary actions like this before. So everyone will be watching to see what happens. But I would imagine the suspension will be upheld. So if you're playing football, don't swing your helmet at somebody. I would hope that you didn't need me to tell you that to know not to do it. But something to think about, I guess. Let's talk about our weeks. We're in that section of the show, that glorious section. What are you up to Wednesday? And let's swing it over to Techtic to start today.
Okay, so this past week, and you guys are going to all make fun of me, but I very much enjoy the Christmas holiday. So what I do...
Why would I make fun of you? This is great so far.
As soon as I can, I decorate the inside of my house with Christmas decorations, but only the inside. And so if you walk in my house, it is a winter wonderland, but none of my neighbors know, and none of my neighbors can know because I don't want them to think that I am a crazy Christmas fanatic.
So what's your cutoff point? Like, did you reach a certain date and you were like, okay, now it's okay for me to do this, or is it just you feel it out?
It's it's basically when I finish eating the Halloween candy leftovers.
Okay, that's a pretty good rule. I mean, I don't, so we're not fully decorated here yet, but I can see from where I'm sitting, there's a few decorations up. We're putting our tree up this weekend, which incidentally you guys gave to me, so thank you for that.
It's a great tree.
It's a fantastic tree, it really is. Anyways, go on. I barged in on your Christmas decoration.
So yeah, by the way, we have a fake tree. I know there's a lot of haters that say you got to go real, but that's just never been a tradition of mine. I like the good old fake tree. And we've got almost every room's decorated. And the next step will be me to get into the baking spirit. So the goal is to gain 10 pounds in baked goods.
What? Wait, hold on. Back up. The goal is for you to gain 10 pounds, or you're saying you're going to bake 10 pounds of cookies?
I'm going to eat so many baked goods that I gain 10 pounds.
Okay, it is the former. Okay, interesting.
'Tis the season.
What's your Christmas cookie? What's your weapon of choice here? If you had to gain that 10 pounds with only one cookie, what would it be?
I'm not a big cookie guy. I like to bake breads, actually. Santa is not disappointed either, because good pumpkin bread or zucchini bread or banana bread, all fantastic options.
Yeah, I mean, you want to gain 10 pounds. You just mentioned 2 of the 3 of those had vegetables in it, and the other one had fruit. So I think if you want to really get to that 10 pounds quickly, you're gonna need some more sugar involved. But
trust me, there's plenty of sugar in my breads. Don't you knock my breads.
Well, when does it stop becoming a bread and start becoming a cake? Think about that. Think about that, and I'll get back to you next week, I guess. I just bought some of those. You ever at the grocery store and you see that little white Pillsbury Doughboy gesturing at, those little circle sugar cookies that have like Christmas trees on them?
Those are amazing.
I saw them and I was like, you've been at the grocery store where you see something and you're like, well, I have to buy this. I could have $0 in my account and I'd be like, I'll take the overdraft fee to buy these. So I have them in my fridge right now. I think I'm going to bake them up tomorrow. Very excited.
Do it. 'Tis the season.
When does the outdoor decoration happen?
That has to happen after Thanksgiving.
Lest you be judged by your neighbors?
Correct.
Understood. Nerdbomber, what do you have?
So I have 2 words for you guys, and then I'm going to do a quick spoiler warning. The Mandalorian.
Oh, yeah, let's talk about this.
And I know you've both watched this. So if you guys are holding off and you haven't subscribed to Disney Plus and you don't want any spoilers for The Mandalorian, I suggest you skip ahead in the timestamps to the next section. But for now, I want to deep dive into my favorite new thing ever. Baby freaking Yoda.
Baby Yoda. Oh my God. Baby
Yoda. I know it's not Yoda, but I don't know what else to call him. And Baby Yoda is probably the cutest thing that I've ever seen. Maybe only accepting Baby Groot, but they're pretty high up there. They might be tied.
Really down to those 2. I saw your Twitter poll. I believe I voted for Baby Yoda. But it's close. It's very close.
The scene of him playing with the frog, just amazing. My heart melted.
The scene where he's using the Force, he's trying so hard, and we're like, you got this, little guy. You got this.
And plus, how relatable is that? He tries really hard at something, and then he sleeps for 12 hours. I'm like, that's what I want my life to be. Try really hard at something, and then sleep for 12 hours. Do you think he's ever going to speak?
I think eventually. So my hopes and dreams for The Mandalorian, now that Baby Yoda is in my life. I want Baby Yoda to be a key part of The Mandalorian moving forward. I want him to develop a big relationship with The Mandalorian, where maybe it's a father-son type thing, or a mentor-mentee, and then they frolic through the universe together, collecting bounties and being best friends.
Right. Well, and episode 3 is going to be crazy because he's presumably going to go back to Werner Herzog and be like, he's clearly already very protective of Baby Yoda. So he's going to probably start a fight with those stormtroopers and just run off with this Baby Yoda, and then who knows what's going to happen.
If that doesn't happen, I'm going to be the most disappointed person ever. And I know it's super predictable, but that's what I want.
They know how cute Baby Yoda is. That's totally where this is going.
And I don't think he's ever going to speak. He's 50 years old and he's not saying anything. So unless he goes, bah, that's going to be what you're going to get.
He'll just say Mando or something, something like that. I'm conflicted because I think Baby Yoda is extremely cute. I think he's going to be a great plot device. But here's the thing. He has to die, right? I mean, he has to.
Shut your face.
I'm just saying, this is taking place in between Return of the Jedi and Force Awakens. There is no place for Baby Yoda in the late trilogy. I think he either dies or, maybe it's like a Yoda situation where he just goes to Dagobah. And
the galaxy is a large place. Just because they didn't have it in the Force Awakens storyline doesn't mean they weren't in another location in the galaxy far, far away.
I will say they keep telling us that this final movie in Star Wars is going to be the end of the Skywalker saga. That entire thing is done. So maybe this is going to lead into whatever the next chapter for Star Wars is.
The Baby Yoda Chronicles.
I would sign up for that. I would go see every single movie. Disney has a monopoly on cute baby creatures, and they know exactly how to pull your heartstrings because they introduce these cute baby characters, and then you're sold. Baby Groot has probably sold more merchandise and stupid things. Like, I almost bought a Baby Groot Chia pet. Do I need one? Would I ever take care of it? No, but I almost bought it.
I mean, you didn't need it, but you probably should have bought it.
I exercised some restraint and then instead bought a Baby Groot figure.
Okay, reasonable. So does that summarize your update? Baby Yoda.
More or less, yeah. Baby Yoda. And just The Mandalorian being, I mean, I guess I did expect it to be good, but it's great. I enjoy it.
I am pleasantly surprised. I had doubts going in. I mean, is it the main reason I got Disney Plus? Yeah, but that doesn't mean I didn't still have doubts going in. But like, the production values are absolutely outstanding. Great action so far. Really excited to see where it goes.
I think it's really, really good. I have spoken.
Oh yeah, that guy is great. He deserves almost as much mention as Baby Yoda. Like, he like fixes the Mandalorian's whole ship, and the Mandalorian's like, "What do I owe you?" He's like, "You're good, man." I'm just like, wow, this guy's the bomb.
Like, there was a little part of me that hoped that he would take the Mandalorian's invitation to join the crew. Because could you imagine a crew of that guy, Baby Yoda, and the Mandalorian? That's like
I'd be there.
Best friends adventures in space. Yes, please.
I hope he comes back. I mean, I think there's a lot, like, I love the whole Beskar steel thing. Like, I think that could be a really cool upgrade mechanic for a TV show. Like, it felt video gamey, right? When he takes the Beskar steel to that forger, and he forges I can't remember the name of it, the thing that goes on his shoulder. It's like, okay, I have one piece of, I'm gonna get a bunch more pieces of this, and eventually I'm gonna have a really, really badass suit of armor. I was like, that is cool. So I'm excited to see where it goes. I'm excited to see what backstory the protagonist is given. On
and it
my
was
end,
funny.
It was funny, yeah. I think it has potential to get even funnier. I think we're going to see a lot more characters get involved.
Were you disappointed that the team up didn't last for the assassin droid?
I did like the assassin droid. The thing about the assassin droid is you might see more, right? Because that was IG-11. We know IG-88 exists. That's a character in the universe, and he's a bounty guild droid. There's probably a bunch of them out there. So hopefully we see more of them, and maybe they have similar personalities. Voiced by Taika Waititi, also, if you didn't know that, which is kind of a cool little tidbit about The Mandalorian. Also, the score is amazing. Anyways, we should move on, but The Mandalorian's great. Go check it out. We should de-spoiler the rest of the episode. We are going to talk about Star Wars more because the quiz is Star Wars related today, but my update also, in addition to watching The Mandalorian, I have really two things. One, I have actually started decorating the outside of my house early, which is unprecedented because I usually wait until after Thanksgiving. I also don't usually decorate the outside of my house very much.
The neighbors are going to judge you.
The neighbors can go suck my big toe. It's going to get cold, man. I want to get it done before it gets cold. Also, there were really good deals at Target for outdoor lights. Shout out to Target. Opinion question for the both of you. How do you feel about the big string lights? You know, the lights that aren't the little tiny twinkly ones. They're the big boys.
The big bulbs?
Yeah, the big bulbs.
So growing up at my parents' house, that is what we used. Our outside decorations were exclusively those until I probably got a little bit older. Then my dad started to get into the string lights, the icicles. And then now it's a combination of both, but I do really like those. On our house, personally, we don't use them, but I actually did. We were in Target the other day, and I suggested to Techtic. I was like, "Oh, we should get those. We should do that." Yeah, I got them. They were on sale. I purposely chose the big bulbs, and I'm very pleased with how they've turned out. I'll probably post a photo at some point. The last thing before we get to Fantasy Movie League in the game, I'm rewatching the old trilogy Star Wars with my girlfriend who has never seen them. Shout out to my girlfriend. We watched New Hope on Sunday and we watched Empire last night. And I gotta say, Empire has never been really my favorite in spite of the fact that it's everyone else's favorite. But after watching last night again, I feel like I'm gaining more and more of an understanding of why it's so great, more and more enjoyment of it. So
looking forward to Return, because Return is my favorite personally of all of them, but Empire was great. So, looking forward to seeing Rise of Skywalker in December, and we're just kind of getting caught up for that. The Fantasy Movie League. Guys, I did manage to fill out a lineup this week. That's the good news. The bad news is I still did terribly. Running down the list, though, our winner this week, Justin ARRadio Moving Pictures, coming in at 61. Hackett's Tech at number 2 with 59. Our good friend Ben at 58.5. Spitfire at 58.5, just a little bit under Ben. Nerdbomber, number 5 at 57, closer to 58, actually. Techtic at number 6 with 54. Mecha Yoda at 52. And then there's me, also at 52. Actually, shout out to Mecha Yoda. Me and him, or her, submitted exactly the same Cineplex, and it was bad. I bet a little bit too much on Charlie's Angels. Florida Hawk at number 9 with 49, and Hipster Pop Geek at number 10 with $48 million. Looking at the overall, I'm not gonna read the entire slate just because we're running a little short on time. But Hipster Pop Geek still in a comfortable lead at 288. Justin ARRadio at 234, making up some ground. So if you want to get in on the fun, Fantasy Movie League, you can head on over to fantasymovieleague.com. Look up our league, which is the Online Warriors podcast, and it is a private league, but the password to get in is podcast, all lowercase. Techtic, I believe you are our game master this week.
I am. So today's guess if it's a real or fake game is Star Wars Species. So, Illeagle, you have clouded to be the expert of the three of us, so
I have a lot to prove here.
I'm expecting a W from you.
Wow. Stakes are high.
So are you folks ready?
I was born ready.
I am good to go.
Okay. The first species is referred to as the Armorans.
That's fake.
I'm going to say that's real.
The Armorans are a fox-like species. That is real.
So you're saying I'm already losing. Great. Let's keep rolling.
The second species are referred to as the Yadi.
Fake?
I'm going to say fake as well.
That is my fake name for the Yoda species.
That's what I kind of figured. It sounded too much like Yoda. And after talking about Baby Yoda for like whatever we talked about it for like 5 minutes, it sounded too familiar to me.
I thought it was like Lil Yachty, you know, the rapper. Anyways.
That is a species in itself.
Yeah. Okay, so I'm still only down by 1. I'm still in this.
The next one is the Surcan.
That's real.
They are a species with cone-like heads to fit their extra heart in. And they're also pretty good at mind control.
Wow.
Okay. The next species are the Vela.
That's real.
You seemed very confident, so I'm going to steal your answer and say it's real.
That is real. The Vela are a amphibious humanoid inhabitants of the planet Velron.
That was actually the first one that I actually knew for sure.
Okay. The next species are the Farlaw.
That's fake.
I'm going to go real.
That is fake.
Yes.
The Farlaw are fake.
Sounds too much like the last one.
Vela? Nah.
Yeah, also, I think isn't it Vila? Or am I wrong about that? It doesn't matter. Keep going.
Vella. The next species are the Kobach.
Real.
That's fake.
That is real.
Dang it.
The Kobach are an insectoid species from planet Kobath.
So wait, am I winning again?
Yeah, you're winning again.
You are up by 1.
I'm
Being
blowing
the
it.
Star Wars master. Oh, yeah.
I'm absolutely blowing it.
Okay.
Continue.
This last one.
This is the last one?
Yeah, I'm doing it out of 7.
Oh my gosh. Okay. Well, it's a must-win situation for me. Continue.
You can either tie it up or lose. This last one are the Rishi.
That's fake.
Hold on. So, worst case scenario, if I go against you and I'm right, I win. If I go against you and I'm not right, then we just tie.
So you could just say the same thing as me and cruise to victory. But do you want to be that guy?
I'm going to say they're real.
The Rishi are an avian species from planet Rishi.
Wait, so this one's a real one? You didn't make it up?
Yeah, it's real. I thought you said Mishi. Rishi?
Yes. They have human-like hands at the end of their wings.
How do you spell it?
Rishii.
Oh, the Rishi maze. I'm an idiot. Anyways, I lost. The Rishi, you don't know about the Rishi maze? Why do I know about the Rishi maze?
I picked them because they reminded me of my Dungeons and Dragons character, if I'm being honest.
The Rishi, man, I can't remember what the Rishi maze is now. It's like a line in one of the movies. Okay, well, I blew it. That's all right. There's always next week, you know.
So Illeagle got beat in basically Star Wars trivia by Nerdbomber.
Oh yeah, I'm not gonna let you live that down.
You won't be able to let me live it down because I will be dead out of shame. Well, that's a bummer, but we hope you enjoyed listening to me lose at a game that was designed for me to win. If you liked what you heard, you can head on over to Apple Podcasts and leave us a good review. We'd love to see that. We love reading reviews, especially if they're positive, but even if they're not. And we thank you, as always, for listening to us for yet another week. We'll be back again next week to talk to you about all things nerd with a special guest.
Oh, yeah. Looking forward to it.
Boop, boop.